And welcome, Balázs Orbán, political director to the Prime Minister of Hungary.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
Good to have you here. We know that later today, your Prime Minister will be traveling from Washington to Mar-a-Lago, Florida, to meet with Donald Trump, his second meeting in 4 months. Why is he so interested in the second Trump term?
Well, it's not about American domestic politics. We, with the Prime Minister, we are on a peace mission because for us, Ukrainian-Russian war is a very important issue. Ukraine is a neighboring country for us. Ethnic Hungarians are living on the territory of Ukraine. They are suffering and losing their life. And from the very first moment of the conflict, the Hungarian position is very unique. We are talking in favor of peace and diplomatic solutions, not military solutions. Mm-hmm. And we started a peace mission after the European Parliament election because we realized that no one is really doing in favor of peace, just talking about peace. So we visited Kiev, we visited Moscow, we visited Beijing, we met with the Turks, and we came to Washington for the NATO meeting, and I think it can have an important role in this peace mission.
But just to be clear, you have said that Russia violated international law when it invaded Ukraine.
Of course. This is the Western position. This is our position. We help the Ukrainians in a humanitarian way, but we don't see a military solution of this conflict. So the sooner we are able to finish it, is better for everyone. And I think it has a very negative consequence on entire Western world, but definitely Europe. Inflation, energy prices, suffering of middle class. We are losing life on a daily basis.
Right. So your Prime Minister, is he delivering a message that comes out of his meetings with Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping? Is he delivering one to Mr. Trump?
No, it's our duty, according to our understanding, is to collect information and to collect messages. We are a small country, so we are not a decisive player in this conflict, but no one is there or brave enough to play a mediative role. I think somebody has to take action because, like.
But did you see any proof that there was any interest on the part of Russia in actually ending the war? Was there any message that Vladimir Putin conveyed?
Well, I think that the current discussions about peace are going to a bad direction in general because everybody believes, or at least communicates, that this war will end in a way that somebody is dictating a detailed peace plan, and the other party will accept it. But it's not going to happen. In those conflicts where you don't have a clear winning or losing side, a peace process goes the other way around. So first, restore communication channels, and then try to agree on a short-term ceasefire, and then use it as a window of opportunity to sit down and negotiate more complicated things. This entire negotiation process will be definitely very hard, very complicated. But the first step is about communication, and the first step is about raising the possibility of a short-term ceasefire. And I think it's a positive sign from all. It's a positive sign from all sides that we were received in Kiev, in Beijing, in Moscow, and in Washington as well. So
back in March, when your Prime Minister went to Mar-a-Lago and visited Donald Trump for the first time that we know of, he gave an interview afterwards, and he said, your Prime Minister, that Donald Trump told him the United States would not give another penny to Ukraine if he's reelected president, and that would end the war. Is that still your understanding? And if that is the case, doesn't that just end a war on Russia's terms? And Russia started this war. It sounds like defeat for Ukraine.
Well, but Donald Trump, when he was a president, we have first-hand experience. He was a president for like 4 years. And back at that time, the entire world was a more peaceful and stable place. He did have really big diplomatic success in Middle East, Abraham Accords. There was no conflict in Ukraine. So what we experience is that he is capable of doing something, and he's capable of stopping the war. he has to know how he can achieve his goals and the American goals, but the current American administration strategy, which is about continuation of the war and fueling further conflict, according to our view, it leads us nowhere.
But Russia invaded in 2014. Donald Trump did nothing to remove those troops. He did provide Javelin missiles to Ukraine to fight the Russians. So he could have stopped a war then, theoretically, and didn't. But to your broader point...
Sorry, if I may add a comment to that. So it was the same conflict between the same partners in 2014, but there was no potential risk of escalation what we have now.
You don't think Vladimir Putin would have done a full-scale invasion?
On a daily basis. It didn't happen. Mm-hmm. That was a frozen conflict. We could avoid escalation. But now everybody is talking about, also in Europe, but most probably also here in Washington, potential NATO-Russia direct confrontation, missiles coming from one direction to another.
They're trying to prevent it.
It's insane. I hope everybody tries to prevent it, but I think the current decisions are leading us not into that direction, but leading us towards the further escalation.
So your prime minister said there is a very, very high chance that President Biden would leave the White House next January. Why does your prime minister speak so frequently about this administration? Because it's hurt the relationship with the United States.
Hungary is a small country. It wants to have a good relationship with the United States, and we have good relationship. We are a loyal NATO member, spent 2% of our GDP. American business community feels in a very positive way itself in Hungary. But unfortunately, manage the relationship with the Democratic administration, as I'm representing a conservative government, it's very complicated because their most important thing always is the ideology. So it's like...
They say the inverse of that. Actually, the U.S. ambassador, David Pressman, gave a pretty scathing speech last week. He said, no other ally or partner of the United States is overtly and tirelessly campaigning for a specific candidate in the U.S. election and is convinced it only helps, and he thinks, your prime minister is convinced it helps Hungary, or at least helps him personally. I'm not sure which. Which is it?
Well, me neither. So we are not campaigning for anybody. We are just European allies, and we are here to explain what the consequences of American policy decisions...
Your prime minister has endorsed Donald Trump.
American policy decisions are on us. This is what we do. And we are very open in that the previous administration, their policy decisions were much better for Europe, according to our understanding, and for Hungary than the current administration decisions. This is the American democratic side, sorry to say that, but it's proven, it's a factual thing, who are financing Hungarian opposition, liberal opposition, through media, through NGOs, through think tanks, through direct political financing, because they want to get rid of with conservative governments.
I think the U.S. is a NATO member. We are allies.
Yes, I agree.
If your country was attacked, the United States military would be required to defend it.
And if your country is attacked, the Hungarian military will be here to help you.
But exactly, and has in other conflicts. But that's sort of the point, which is why mix ideology into it?
This is my question.
Because the U.S. and Hungary are allies. Why come out in an election year and endorse Donald Trump?
So
because it makes it about ideology.
No, I mean, it's a response. It's a response. Because really, I don't know whether the American voters are aware of the fact that their money goes directly through channels to finance opposition everywhere, finance those governments which are, from an ideological point of view, disagree with the current administration.
Are you talking about U.S. support for civil society?
No, not civil society, but political forces. And this is an unfortunate thing. So if we are ally, then why should finance each other's opposition? It leads us nowhere. It brings us nowhere.
That's about human rights, and that is where I think you're going, which is that the United States has criticized the Orbán government for treatment of journalists and treatment of civil society. Is that what you're talking about when you say opposition?
This is a fake criticism. I can remember when our conservative government came back to power in 2010. We accepted a new constitution. It's a constitution which fits for Hungary. Probably
Change the constitution.
Yeah, change the constitution. And then the previous American liberal administration came and they told us openly that, you know, here's a paper and these are the elements where you have to change your constitution. And that was 11 or 12 element. You know, what can you say as a sovereign country? I mean, should you respond that, okay, we will change the constitution? Because if you want to be friend with the country, then you have to change your constitution. None of the sovereign countries would respond it that way. So what we are criticizing is that, you know, liberal ideology, it cannot play a positive role in foreign policy decisions. We are loyal allies. You can see the data, spending,
right.
Militarily, business community. How is that possible that we don't have a dual tax agreement between the United States and Hungary? Meanwhile, there is a dual tax agreement between the United States and Russia.
Let me ask you something important then, that
yeah.
You're describing things in ideological terms and progressives and liberals and all that. Your prime minister has been praised by a lot of American conservatives, including J.D. Vance, a vice presidential contender, on this program. He talked and praised your prime minister. But the leader of Republicans in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, gave a scathing speech about your prime minister and those who look up to him. He said Orbán's undermining Western security by deepening ties with China, cozying up to Vladimir Putin, and sucking up to Iran. He said this isn't where America should be taking our foreign policy cues. That's a Republican, the Republican leader, saying that. How do you respond to that?
I mean, we didn't want to respond to that. It's a different opinion. Some Republicans have this opinion, some Republicans have another opinion. So what we think is that I think the Western
ties with
world,
Iran, reaching out to Russia,
well, I mean,
embracing China.
sorry, from a factual point of view, it's obviously not true. So it's not true. It's not the case. I don't know if we have any time to go into discussions. Obviously, Hungary have no close ties with Iran. What we are doing is that we have a relationship with Iran. We have communication channels with Iran, as like Israel. Hungary is the strongest supporter of Israel on the Middle East, but we want to prevent interstate conflict in the Middle East. And for this, you have to have communication channels. It's the same with Russians. It's not about ideology. It's about, this is our neighbor. This is into that conflict. So if somebody's talking about the peace, that you don't need to communicate with those with whom you disagree. But if you take seriously diplomacy, and if you take seriously your job as an elected politician who is representing the nation, that you have to communicate with everybody if you have a duty to make. And our duty is to protect the Hungarian citizens and try to stop a war in a neighboring country. And you have to talk for this. Yes. I understand that the American public is in a war mode, and you know, it's like when you are in a war.
They're definitely not.
When you are in a war, then obviously the propaganda is very strong on all sides, and you have to portray those who are talking differently with a very dark tone. But this is not the case. We are accused on a daily basis being Putin puppets, but they are not true if you want to make peace. And I think this is the interest of Americans, this is the interest of Europeans, and definitely the interest of Hungarians. Then you have to communicate, even if you get pressure and punishment.
Did you receive any assurances from Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping that they would stop the war?
No, it's not about insurances. It's about starting the communication, at least trying to do something, not just talk about it. This is a war which affects, I think, from a financial terms, the everyday life of the American people. And obviously, not just from a financial terms, but also physical terms, everyday life of the Hungarians. So it's not about insurance. It's about that you have to restart communication if you want to achieve something. No one is saying that it's going to be hard. These are just big-headed guys. They will not give up their goals just like this. We are a small country. We know very well. But first, communication, and take seriously the peace and try to achieve it through the ways of diplomacy. The sooner we start it, the better for everyone.
Director, thank you for your time and
Thank you
explaining
very
your
much.
position.
I appreciate it.